never thought my cut would see the light of day, and maybe rightly so. You know, the picture came out, it was what it was. It wasn't the original director's cut, but it was a fellow, I forget his name on purpose, who took over. It was 25 years ago. And then one day Michael Thal called me and said, listen, there really is a internet movement afoot that they want to see your cut. I said, I wouldn't know where to start. He said, well, I'd love to do it. I said, hey, all the people, you're the right guy, go do it. And then he told me the studio was cooperating and that they were going to do it, and it was exciting to me. I kind of forgot it. And when I realized it was really going to happen, it was, yeah, quite anticipatory.
Reconstructing this film is not only rare, but it's probably unique in film history. I don't think there is a film that had so much footage shot and not used, and the opportunity of putting this back together is the best job I could ever have in my life. Superman 1 and 2 were shot simultaneously, not back to back, and Dick was working off of an enormous script. And so when they were in the Daily Planet set, Donner shot out all his scenes from Superman 1, and then shot out scenes from Superman 2. So think about just keeping track of continuity between the two films that are not sequels, but a part 1 and part 2 of the same story.
When I look at it now, I like it. I'm a little embarrassed by things, but I have to take myself back 25 years and see it, why I did it then and how I did it then, not knowing what I know now.
Dick shot most of his shooting script for Superman 2 before they had to stop shooting Superman 2 so they could make the release date on Superman 1. So Lester had most of the film to start out with. And also, they didn't want to include Marlon Brando for financial reasons. So Richard Lester needed to rewrite the Brando stuff. They also probably looked at the cut that Stewart had put together of Superman 2 and decided to change certain things for whatever reasons.
When I got started on this, I didn't know what to expect, but I wanted to see that old footage.
When 6 tons of film comes over from Technicolor London, it needs to be sorted through, and the negative vault people, first of all, had to separate everything, find the music elements, put them aside, you know, organize all that, and then it got moved downstairs into the feature film vault, and Bruce and Dorothy and Tony and John dutifully went through all kinds of cataloging that was done just to try to find the particular pieces of negative that made up what Dick shot.
Trying to find those little pieces, those little cuts, those sequences. In those days when you cut on a moviola, you know, you made a cut, and a positive cut, you'd have a 1.5-foot clip that was, you lay on the side, put it in the bin, and you'd cut it in later. Well, when they get lost, they're lost. Unless you go and find that negative number and reprint that reel and everything. And so, and Michael's done it.
We found sound reports in all sorts of different places, so I went and put together a list of everything in order so that when we go to order sound reprints or we have things for the sound effects department, they know which quarter-inch has which slate on it.
The sound elements have come to us in all kinds of different conditions. We have a lot of mag, which we've had to go through a restoration process to sort of get it back to even a quality that's acceptable by any standards. They run the mag through a baking process to get it into as clean of an analog format as we can.
We would be baking the tape or film because over long-term storage, the tape absorbs moisture from the environment, thereby making the base very sticky. So we bake the film to eliminate the water content that is absorbed into it.
It was just painstaking, meticulous work. It took a long time, a lot of work, but we found everything.
Boy, I like this.
I like it too.
What did you take all this out?
Jeez, Michael.
Look at that. For the bad effects, that's
No,
all.
we would have.
Oh, put that back in. Boy, oh boy.
Boy, Michael, what must you have been thinking?
Boy, oh boy. You drink a lot during the day?
When we did find the footage, and it took months and months and months, Dick came over and saw all the scenes. He also didn't want to deal too much with the Lester scenes that needed to be left in to make a complete story. But I realized after a while that he had been familiar with those scenes, and they hurt him, I think. That was always a sore spot.
I've looked at it a couple times. I've given my input as best I can, but I can't do it anymore. I can't divorce myself from the disparagement of time, whereas he can because he's going in fresh and it's new. And he's doing a wonderful job. It's tough to look at. Bow before Zod.
It's Neil. Neil before Zod.
Right, sorry. Always rewriting.
So I cut a lot of these scenes from scratch and then showed them to Dick and tried to make it in the style of what the first film was like.
Let me show you a little cut that I did here.
You made a cut here? Made a cut in my footage?
One thing that I could work on from the very beginning is the opening sequence. I did have access to Superman 1, and we all thought it would be kind of cool to show scenes from a different angle. It's the same scene, the same line readings, but showing things from a different perspective, like when Zod is screaming at Brando as he's walking away in Superman 1, all those lines were played off of his eyes or his mouth, and this time you can see fuller shots of Zod screaming.
You will bow down before me! Both you, and then one day, your ass!
The toughest things to look at, and that is the scenes I wanted to shoot that they wouldn't let me, or they moved on, or they decided to shoot. Perfect example for me is there's a scene I didn't shoot except for the screen test. I thought it was so important that I used it as the screen test for Lois and Clark. And that was a scene where they go to Niagara Falls on this assignment, and what we had, and I only have it on the screen test, was they get to this hotel room and they decide to go out that night, and he knocks on the door and he comes in and she pulls a gun out of the drawer. He said, Lois, what are you doing? She said, I'm betting your life that you're Superman. She points a gun at him and fires. And Chris transforms. The glasses come off and it's Superman. And that was the tip. I mean, that broke the whole thing. It was beautiful.
Dick wanted that scene to be part of this cut, and it shows a little of the dynamics between Clark and Lois that were envisioned for that revelation. We also decided that in the scene with Lex Luthor and Miss Tessmacher, that we could allow the audience to see Brando much clearer. In that scene, he is reciting recordings that Jor-El has made for his son, and rather than being the ghostly head of Jor-El talking to his son almost in person, it allowed us to actually show Marlon Brando clearly, yet give it some sort of a look as if it was some sort of a Kryptonian recording. We had close to 200 visual effects in the film, and that's on top of all the visual effects that were already there.
Nowadays, we'd use computer graphics and
To take
even
out-
that all out, huh? Why didn't you do it?
We do have a budget.
Huh?
We do have a budget that we try to stick with.
Oh, why?
Yeah, I know.
You trying to end your career?
There was a lot of work to be done. I mean, the villains escaping the Phantom Zone was all shot by Dick. The rocket was shot by Dick's model people. The explosions, everything that was all shot back then, we just had to composite it. And then all the Brando stuff and some little touch-ups we did here and there and everywhere.
This is a sort of one of the typical things that they did for it. Lester shot his fight over Metropolis. Superman gets thrown into a side of a building. In Donner's version, he actually gets thrown into the Statue of Liberty torch. But they changed that when Lester finished the movie.
It was interesting working with Maxim Look Effects to get the visual effects to look as if they were integral to the Superman 1-2 movies and not make them look like 2006 visual effects.
So this is some of the new Fortress of Solitude shots that were done that have Marlon Brando in it, because he wasn't in the second movie originally, but he had shot all the footage for it. This was pretty nicely set up. There were plates that were shot way back when. The background's a separate element. They had shot him over black velvet with a black turtleneck on to get just his face. And the foreground people were on a separate element, too. Back in its day, this was a pretty heavy, sophisticated shoot. Now, with digital stuff, you have a little more leeway, but it's kind of nice having, like, things almost pre-set up. There's a lot of these kind of shots with Marlon Brando in them, which was pretty interesting to work on.
I'm supervising the sound, which is organizing a team of people to put together all the sound effects and all the different sound elements of the film for the remix. The sound elements have come to me in every possible form.
Basically, some of our challenges are taking 30-year-old tracks that are from various different sources. Some of them are married tracks, composites. Some of the raw tracks we were able to find, some of the original ADR, just clean it up to today's standards.
When she first starts blowing, if you can do some kind of an effect there, so it really becomes some sort of an identifiable sound, which you can then use, kind of just take that little piece and push it forward in a lot of places. So we don't know it's not wind, it's her.
Okay.
You know? Soupy's lip loft. Oh, when Soupy leaves the bus or the truck or whatever it is in that very beginning, can you give him a little something there?
A wish off or something?
Yeah, this is really good mix.
Oh, good. Thank you.
No, thank you.
The ending for Superman 2 was always turning the world back and turning time backwards. And then at a certain point in Superman 1, they decided to put the most spectacular beat in both films into the end of Superman 1. And Dick said, okay, when we come back to finish Superman 2, we'll just figure out what we're going to do. It was either going to be turning time back or using the Lester magic kiss. And if we used the magic kiss, then we would go back to the White House, and Superman would return the flag back to the White House, and it would end up, and it would be a very patriotic and a very good ending as well, too. But when Tom saw it, he came up with a very good point, and he said, Clark should never kiss Lois. Only Superman should kiss Lois. And the decision was then made to turn the world back, and that allowed us to use the end scene in the Daily Planet, and now you have this version. And I'm very proud of what we've put together.
You know, you're really super.
My hope is that people will view this as a part 2 to Superman Part 1. The same tone, it's finishing the same story, and also my hope is that people like it a lot.
When I see things like that, and I know what that picture could have been and what Tom and I keep saying Tom because he's so good, and what Tom and I could have continued, the continuing saga of Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder, it would have been quite a series of films.